All right, I have the pleasure to introduce Jaede Bayala.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone who came, and to SK and everyone at the waiting room for giving me this opportunity to talk about my work. So I wanted to start off and give sort of a little bit of an overview of what my process was and what my thoughts were for these pieces that I completed during my residency. So there are 19 pieces here that I completed inside the gallery, and then a few pieces that I have done this past year. So within my work and within the proposal that I submitted for the residency, I wanted to focus on my experiences within the Midwest and in Puerto Rico in terms of the natural environment, what that means to me, and naturally, with that comes an exploration of my culture and my identity. So what I am thinking about, one, when I'm making work, is what are the differences and similarities between making art that's Puerto Rican art or making art as a Puerto Rican, and how I can still be a Latin artist even when I'm not making work that directly is speaking or showing motifs of my culture. It's all going to be there because that is who I am as a person, as an artist. And so that is something that I try to keep in mind. And family is a really big part of my life. I'm super close with my parents. My dad and his family grew up in Puerto Rico, and then my mom's grandfather is from the island. And it has taken a long time for me not only to accept but really embrace my culture and my identity, especially in the Midwest. I don't look like everybody. My family doesn't do the same things, and so I really wanted to just like hide and isolate and pretend that I didn't dress like everybody else. Like I remember my mom would play Latin music in the car, and I'd go, "Turn it off! I don't want to hear it." And then now I listen to Bad Bunny and I cry, and I'm like, "Oh, I miss her." So it's really been a full circle shift for me, and I mean, getting to make pieces like this that really honor, I feel, my family even in a time before I was born, and have little bits and pieces to me that are special that maybe I'm not communicating for the public. And I think when I'm making work, I'm not thinking about, oh, how is someone going to do this? I'm sort of thinking about what do I want to show? What is it that I'm experiencing that I would like to come through, even if it's just for myself. And I think this is really special, not only because it's all my work, but because it's so important to me. I don't think ever made so much work about, or not even just about, celebrating my family and my culture and my experiences, and to have them in all one room is sort of, oh my goodness, I made all of this, and it felt like a blip of just 3 weeks, and then it's here. And something else that I wanted to, I think, talk about that goes through within my practice and also making this work is that I told a professor this past year during a studio visit, I said, I think I feel the most Puerto Rican when I'm in my studio. And that was a huge realization for me. I sort of said it and I went, oh my God, that's crazy. And I think that just goes to show how hard I've been trying to find my voice as an artist and where my work sits within the arts community, especially here in Kansas City, where, there is, even at the Art Institute as well, there's not a lot of diversity. And so it's hard, again, as even when that's something I was feeling when I was younger, to find a place where I feel like I fit in. And so what I've done is I've made my own place. I, this past year, and will this year, continue running the Hispanic Latin group that we have. And it's something I was a part of, freshman and sophomore year, but there weren't a lot of meetings, so it wasn't really big. No one to stay there and communicate and make sure that it's a group that keeps living. And so this year I thought, well, I'm gonna do it. Just no one else is, and I know that if I'm feeling this way, that there's other people who feel that way. So being able to see, for example, this year, a whole bunch of freshmen be in the group and seeing them grow their friendships each time we visit, even if we're just talking or we're talking about art or what we had for lunch. It's a place I know people can feel comfortable or excited to be in. So that's something I think that's really important for me when I'm thinking about my practice. It's also I'm thinking about my community. And so I'm really happy that I have that to influence me in my work and the way that I live my life. And I guess finally, I will say a lot of the motifs that are within these works are iguanas or palm trees and then native plants from Missouri as well. Being here and being able to go to places such as the Jaede Bayala Nature Conservatory or Lakeside Nature Center and really connect with what it means to be in this different environment and find peace within it has been really special to me, and I've been trying to explore what that feels like as I continue to grow, as I enter my senior year in painting at the Art Institute and figure out what it is that I want to do to continue my practice. Have any questions?
Yeah. Any questions from our audience? I'm happy to start it off. I'm like really curious about kind of your process. You know, getting to see you kind of almost like daily kind of working in here. There's like such a range, you know, right here on this wall we have these very like kind of like watery like fluid paintings, and then right next to it are very like, you know, figurative and more like object oriented, or it's just the pastel, like the mark is like a lot more solid. Like how do you choose like which direction you want to go when you start?
Yeah, that is a good question. When coming in here, I started out basically where I left off, doing these really vibrant oil pastel pieces. So doing a base layer of the brightest paint that I can find, and then working on top of the oil pastels. And I was sort of dictating or choosing what scenes I was depicting based on what color I had beneath. And I found that I started with the orange, but I found that I really enjoyed the pink. And in both of these, how having the edges painted sort of illuminates the piece on its own without any other help. And generally, I tend to shift mediums or processes just so I don't get burnt out too. And so these sort of works that I have here, I have done this process before in which I am watering down acrylic paint and applying it to stretched, unprimed canvases and really soaking it in, and then letting that dry and going back in with acrylic inks, with oil pastel, and having that serve as sort of the base layer for things. Within these pieces, it's a similar process, but it differs in my application of the paint. So instead of, you know, sort of throwing the paint on there and then using my hand to soak it in, I was applying water with a paintbrush in the shape that I wanted the paint to go in, and then sort of like watercolor, dipping it into the watered down acrylic and then applying it and watching it spread out on its own, and going back in a little bit once it had dried. And so that, I think, was the most time-consuming process of these pieces, which I enjoyed because, as you can see, I work very quickly. And so sometimes I wonder, what is it like to work on a piece that takes me longer than 4 hours? Especially with this larger piece. I remember calling my mom and going, I've been here all day working, and she's like, well, some artists do that. I feel like I just have, when I'm making work, I'm so in it and so excited to just keep going until I sit back and I go, I think that's done. And I mean, I am a person who would say the work is never done unless I decide, you know, I can always decide to go back in. I say it's done for now, or until someone takes it and it's out of my realm of being able to touch it again. And I'm really okay with that. I think that makes it less hard on me to anxious about is done. Does it need more? I can step away, and it could be years or days or weeks, and I go, I think I'm going to do this or touch this up.
Yeah. And then a small follow-up. Do you like keep do you collect a lot of like images, and like do you have like an album in your phone or something, and then you're like, oh, I've been really wanting to do this in a painting or something?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm working largely from images on my phone, and if they're not directly from my phone, they were scanned into my phone.
Yeah.
Old photo albums, or when I'm visiting my grandparents in Puerto Rico, my grandma coming up and showing me picture after picture that she had found. Especially like this is her nightstand in one of the guest rooms, and it has, I've always seen it, but I finally looked at it when I was there for Christmas, and I went, all these pictures are of me, and I never really digested how, like, I know she loves me, but seeing that and actually fully like digesting it, going, oh my goodness, this is so special. I need to take a picture of this because I know I'm going to want to use it later. And when I'm out in nature, I try to take pictures a lot just to have reference images. And so for this residency, I have an album on my phone that's like pictures to work for, references. And I'll go and like I'll edit some of them to make the colors brighter. But it's not always that, you know, the colors stay the same. I'll take a good amount of liberty with the references that I'm using, and I see it as I'm sort of collaging these images to reimagine what it looks like. And there are maybe the beach scene is one of the only ones where it's a direct one-to-one image that I was using.
Yeah.
And still, it's relatively abstracted, and I've taken liberties with that, but it is just one image that I didn't collage anything else with it. And so I see it as a sort of reimagining of the memories to then create something new.
Awesome.
Do you have any artists or films or books that I feel like when I look at the work, I can think of lots and lots of different visual artists, or even some certain films. That one film, Before Night Falls.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know, or maybe that's not as influential in my work, and that's cool too.
Yeah.
It's more, your own photographs, your own biography, but I'm just always curious what artists are, what movies they like, or books, or maybe they don't have that.
No, I am constantly researching all the time, and I didn't call it that until this year when for my major studio painting course we had to use a site called Arena, which is sort of like Pinterest but more polished and modern, and it was just we had to find articles that were inspiring us artists, and I was like, oh, I do this every single day, whether it's on Instagram, I'm looking at online art websites. And so that is something I think I've always done, especially with artists that have their practice is completely different than mine. And I think that's very helpful to have different views of what art can be, even if my practice may be this one thing, and I can still appreciate and find inspiration from someone who is, say, like a textile designer or a sculptor. And so, yes, artists art all the time, whether it's YouTube or Pinterest or magazines, print publications. I feel like I am collecting a lot too, especially with books. I have way too many and always will, but it feels so special to me to have these pieces of art or knowledge that I get to hold within like my apartment or my room or my studio. And there's one artist that I really like, and her name is Jaede. So she's a Chinese London-born artist, and she recently was at the Yale MFA program for painting, and she published this book of a monograph of her work. And I said to my parents, this is what I want for Christmas. I want oil pastels, and then I want this. And so finally started to collect artist books specifically too. I think this feels really special to me.
Yeah, I looked in your you're in your bio, you talk a lot about like community. I'm interested to hear a little bit more about your publication.
Yes. Yeah, so this year I started my magazine called The Emerging Voice, and that is something that I printed at school, but designed, edited, conducted all the interviews myself, found funds, had like a few people who were helping fund the magazine, which is really great.
So cool.
And so that came about when I was speaking with a professor in painting, Noelle. I was speaking with Noelle, and I told her, I was like, I feel like this is a stupid idea, but I kind of want to start a magazine. She's like, that's not a stupid idea. Who cares if only one person reads it,
right,
or if it's just your friends? Just do it. Because she had just given a meeting about her space, 100 million, and I felt really inspired to do crazy, fun things myself, and that's always how I feel when I talk to her. And so I went, okay, I'm gonna do it. I mean, it's already what I do. A large part of my work with Studios Inc. is conducting reviews and reviews of shows and artists, and it was just, instead of mid-career artists, it was artists like me, emerging, young, and so I believe I interviewed 2 seniors in painting who had not graduated, a junior in painting, a junior in fiber, and then a freshman. And what I was so excited about was each time I went to go talk to them, they were sort of the feeling of, oh, like, I don't know that I have anything good to say, or no one's ever asked me or to be in something like this. And so that felt really empowering, to be able to give them the space to share their practice and their feelings towards their work, especially for the artist I interviewed, who's a freshman, whose name is Maimola. And her work, works in textiles and painting, and I was so amazed to see what work she was making just in those freshman studios. And I had always known that younger artists still have great work, but as myself, as a freshman, if someone asked me, do you want to be in my magazine, I'd go, why me? Why? I haven't done anything. I haven't been in any shows. I don't even know what my major's going to be yet. And so being able to do that was really special to me, and I think also to the people who were included. And I am excited to continue doing it, especially, again, since it's my last year, trying to do everything I can. And I've had some people submit pitches to me for reviews that they've done, and every time I talk about the magazine or someone's asking me about it, something exciting happens. And so I think that is just really fun. It's really hard work, but it's really fun. I always knew that it was going to be hard. I think the hardest part was designing it, since that is something that was new to me. I've done graphic design a few times, but editorial design was new. And I'm very grateful to have a lot of friends in the graphic design department who also came to this show, which meant a lot to me. And so it's always sort of the joke, I'm the resident painter in the graphic design department. But I have a whole bunch of great people around me who support me and really care and want to help me out. And so that's something that I'm always thankful for.
I also really loved that you mentioned potentially an amount of performance in not feeling potentially Puerto Rican, or is this Puerto Rican art, or am I just Puerto Rican and I make art, and that's the lens that everything kind of funnels through.
Yeah.
And I know your work, you're really talking about that kind of in-betweenness, living in Missouri right now, all of these Missouri botanicals from the landscape here, but then this kind of mashup with memories and family, but then I guess, and then you use kind of collage to merge these worlds, and I don't know if I'm even asking a question. But I think it's like really beautiful. Like it becomes this kind of like fantasy space, but it's like very much rooted in your reality. But now you're allowing others to see that reality where it might not be like so visible.
Yeah.
I don't know if that.
Yeah, I'll comment after that. I agree, and especially, I don't know if I mentioned this, I'm not fluent in Spanish.
Yeah.
I wasn't taught Spanish growing up. I still think I should learn Spanish, don't get me wrong, and I took it in growing up in school, but it's that thing
Yeah.
that you don't keep doing it, you forget.
Yeah.
And so, also with Puerto Rico and my family is sort of Puerto Rican Spanglish too, so there's some things I understand, but I think that is something that's been hard for me, and also hard for my mom too, because although she's not fluent, she does know more than I do. And being asked, so when are you gonna learn Spanish? When are you gonna finally do that? Or again, for instance, my great grandmother in this piece, she has sort of a halo over her. She passed this past year, and although I didn't know her very well, I was able to accompany my dad to Puerto Rico, and this was still when I was in high school, for the funeral. And it was hard for me, not just because of the grief, but also the grief of not really knowing her and then not knowing Spanish too. I think that was really hard for me. But then I felt bad about feeling bad about not knowing Spanish. And so it was this very like complicated like emotions that were butting heads with each other. And so that's something that's been helpful to make this work and see, well, this is important to me, and this makes me feel important too, as an artist and then as someone who is Puerto Rican. And it's not all my life, but it's a big part, I would say now. It's a big part of who I am. And I'm happy that it's been that way, whether it's like the music I listen to or the food that I cook too. And when my parents were here, my dad was FaceTiming my grandparents and showing them every piece around. And I mean, I have parts of him in here. He got a 3D printer for his birthday, and so he 3D printed the Puerto Rico sign. And I was visiting him for 4th of July, and he goes, "You should put this in your show," sort of joking. So when he came here, he was like, "Oh my God, we actually did it!" Or like he 3D printed a cookie, which is the tree palm native to Puerto Rico, and so I sort of just put it up there.
Yeah, I'm like really responding to like the collage of it all, but also like the kind of fantasy landscape of these like different worlds kind of like meeting. I mean, even just the piece like right behind you, like the flowers, you know, the scale is like very like stretched, and it's like you know, that whatever that like plant is, it almost looks like a dandelion leaf is like as tall as like the bus stop. Or that's the bus stop, right? Yeah. And so I think that's like really interesting.
Yeah, there is a level, I think, of like fantasy and fantastical elements.
Yeah, and like the one you were talking about of your grandma's like dresser, you know, like these swirling kind of like plants coming